And this is conceptual. This is what our 35% is based on. However, we do know that the private partner who will finance, design, build, operate, and maintain will come in with their design team, and they may change within our set design criteria what the actual bridge looks like. P3 overview. As I said earlier, finance, design, build, operate, and maintain. Exchange for an annual availability fee structure. Our previous solicitation that was out a few years ago was not an availability type P3. We have, through the governor's office and through our board, canceled that solicitation, and we're preparing to go out with a solicitation for an availability fee. In this case, the state would own the revenue, and we would pay the private partner, basically an annual availability or annual lease payment. May include towing operations on behalf of the authority going forward. It may include parts of phase 2, which would be negotiated at a later point. Our model right now is a 35-year substantial completion, or 35 years after substantial completion. $150 million in a reserve fund. This is to handle the shortfall in revenue versus the availability payment in the initial years. This is a bill that Senator Menard can talk to later. It's a bill that will be addressed in the 27th legislature in January. Potential milestone payments. We are in discussion with the governor's office on the possibility of having some significant potential milestone payments. And be frank about it, is to increase the state's share of the revenue, and then also minimize the risk on the private partner. There's $600 million in Safety Lou PAVS allocation. We do have a TIFIA application submitted, and I believe that's online also. And Kevin Hemingway, our Chief Financial Officer, can talk to those later. Senate Bill 80, Senate Bill 158. Both of these are in process. They were introduced. Our legislature is a 2-year process. We are now in the 27th legislature. The bills were introduced this past January, February timeframe. They have made it through both the House Transportation Committee and the Senate Transportation Committee. They are now at the Senate Finance Committee and the House Finance Committee. And to be honest, we ran out of time. We have a 120-day window for our legislature in the first year, 120 in the second year. And we didn't get the bills all the way through to a floor vote. And in fact, at the very end, when we were trying to get it through the House Finance and push it to a floor vote, we didn't have enough time from the gavel to the third reading to actually get it voted on. So both the bills will be addressed early on in this upcoming legislature. 80 and 158 addresses some of the language changes to our legislation, which will be important to a private developer. It's the state obligations. It's an increase from $500 million to $600 million on the PAVS allocation, creation of the reserve fund, which will sit with the Department of Revenue, which is Commissioner Barnett's area. Tax exemption under the P3, so that neither Municipality of Anchorage or the Mat-Su Borough can come in and tax the structure, because it's actually the structure is owned by the state of Alaska. And as I said, they have passed both the House and Senate Transportation Committees. These two bills, 79 and 159, is the appropriation of that reserve fund. We currently have $150 million in these two bills. And it just also how our legislature works is the two bills are companion bills. Senator Menard is the sponsor of the Senate bill, and Representative Newman is the sponsor of the House bill. Whichever bill makes it to the floor first basically takes control, and whichever body votes on it first, then it goes to the other body. And so even though it's in both of the legislatures, House and Senate, they're considered companion bills. This is based on our traffic model. So over the course of 35 years, over the course of this public-private partnership, About 4.5 billion in revenue is created. This is what we pledge back to the availability payment structure. In the initial years, you can see we're short. That's what that reserve fund is for. Money coming out of this, out of the toll revenue will go, one, to pay the availability payments, will pay for any other operating costs, debt, and then it will eventually come back, pay off the reserve fund. And at some point, the reserve fund either sunsets out or transmits into a transportation fund. But it is currently where the revenue is scheduled to go. So over 35 years, we expect, based on our traffic model, about $4.5 billion in toll revenue. State of Alaska, we had an interesting lunch. It was nice to talk about the state in a global setting. We are a state of natural resources. It's interesting to know that international trade, the state did $4.2 billion last year in international trade. We have a AAA rating. Our financial stability, we have about 40 billion, a little over 40 billion in what we call our permanent fund. We have about 10 billion in budget reserve and another 7 billion. When you add in our pension funds and everything else, Jerry, we're at 80 to 90 billion dollars of cash. We're a state of tremendous wealth. We're a young state. With significant infrastructure needs. When Prudhoe Bay was developed in the 60s, we didn't have a road there. We had to create a road, then we built a pipeline. We are constantly in the building mode. We're a state of big projects. Although this is a $715 million project, the state has looked at projects in the $30–40 billion range. You probably have heard about a gas line, a bullet line. We now are in the initial stages of studying a hydroelectric project that's estimated at about $13 billion that would provide power for the state of Alaska. So a lot of great things happening in the state, a lot of financial stability. I can't say it. I grew up in Alaska. I grew up in rural Alaska, so I can't say much. I can't say enough about how great our state is. The RFQ process. The RFQ is to shortlist based on a statement of qualifications. To be honest, this is where you spend a little bit of money to get to the table. The next process, the RFP, is where you spend a lot of money to get the project. Our time schedule right now in the RFQ is we should have the RFQ out sometime in July. I actually have the RFQ here. We are in our final reviews of this document. We need to review it, then the governor's office will review it. Our intent is to have this document out as soon as we can. Our intent is by the next legislature, December, January, to have that shortlisted team to get through the legislature the bills that we have in play right now, and to have an RFP out sometime in the first quarter of 2012 and award it sometime probably in second quarter of 2012. Procurement process, draft RFP. Okay, I got a little bit ahead of myself. So today we're here to kind of, lay out our project. A lot has changed in the last year. A lot of exciting things have changed. The RFQ, going to RFP. We have our one-on-one meetings. I don't know how many we have over the next several days, but I do know the calendar is pretty full from about 7 a.m. in the morning to 5 or 6 in the evening. So I assume most of you have signed up for these one-on-one industry meetings here, and then after then we'll have the industry meetings after the RFQ shortlisted too. Legislation, formal RFP process, our internal time frame between the governor's office, Department of Revenue, Department of Law. It will take 3 months or so or longer for us to get the RFP finalized, although we have already started working on the RFP. One-on-one meetings, proposals submitted, evaluation, possible negotiations, and an award. And again, we're hoping for a 2012, second quarter 2012 award.